Hey guys, and welcome back to another run through that I'm doing on my gunner class. So I got just a few people who had asked me when I was running through dungeons on my brawler to run through some stuff on my gunner. So I figured I would run through a few dungeons on my gunner class instead of running through all of them on the brawler. Because let's face it, let's be honest here, I'm not the best tank, okay? I mean, some of you might have seen my brawler run-throughs and it might have been like, you know what? You're a pretty good tank, but do not be fooled. I'm not a good tank because the reason why I'm doing these other dungeons that I'm calling the harder dungeons, like the Sky Cruiser Endeavor and the last one that I did was well, I did a few. I did the Red Refuge. I did a Corsair Stronghold run, and then I think I might have did one more. I'm not too sure. I can actually look and see if I did or not, but I'm pretty sure I did. I did the Corsairs. I did the Red Refuge. Oh, I also did a Velix Hold as well, which you guys obviously would already know that because you would have already probably seen the video. But I just couldn't think about it off the top of my head. So I'm gonna do like I did with the Red Refuge, and I'm gonna actually have a guide pulled up for this that I'll have to read through, besides not having anything at all to read through, because the Red Refuge dungeon as well as this one, I don't know the mechanics too well. Like I stated before, in that one, if you've seen that one, or if you haven't, then you will. But I run through dungeons the best way and learn them by just running through them, instead of just reading through the mechanics and stuff, because you can read through the mechanics all you want, but it's not going to help you in terms of actually just doing the freaking dungeon. So that's what I just don't understand with people sometimes. Like, I get that it can be frustrating to run through a dungeon with someone who doesn't know the mechanics, because they can die a lot and they won't be able to do as much DPS because they don't know the mechanics as well, and you want to kick them out. But I don't know, I feel like learning is like the best way to learn is just to do it. So if you're like me and you can only learn that way as well, you know what? Just go into the dungeon and don't say a word, okay? If they find out you're a noob, then whatever. They might kick you out, but if you don't say anything, at least they don't know that you're new to the dungeon. So, this first area here is going to be called the control room, I believe. And obviously you can see what the main goal of the control room is. It's not technically about fighting a big boss, not yet. So you gotta fight all of these big mobs before you can take on the boss. So you must clear all the waves of the monsters that spawn. So there's a total of 6 minutes, and that's how long that the waves will last. So the tank can make their way to the corner of the room, so when they add the spawns they can make their way to the corner for the easier battle. But our tank decided not to do that. They just decided to let them come to the center, and then that way it was easier for like the sorcerer classes as well as myself being a gunner class, to just have them all there in the center for us. But either way, it doesn't matter how you do it, because the only way you're going to fight that big guy in the background is if you take on the waves of monsters first. So there's going to be a mixture, as you can see, throughout of hulking Salkatas. Don't know what those are, but those have more HP and can deal more damage. Main focus throughout is that they continuously spawn. So at 2 minutes in, there will be 3 archers. They're easy for the DPS. They are long range, and then at 4 minutes in, there will be a priest and a warrior. DPS should focus on the priest so that she cannot heal the other monsters. If you fail to kill the monsters after 6 minutes, the remaining monsters will be shielded and attack you until the big boss is dead. So that's pretty much it. After you defeat all of the bosses, or all the mobs, then this big guy here will come at you. So a tip for the tank, you should attempt to position the boss far from the gate, as certain attacks may cause him to change throughout the gate and might recharge throughout the gate, and he might reset. So as you can see, he didn't reset for us. We didn't put him towards the gate. We kind of had him more towards the center. So he's considered normal. Archers can use an eagle eye, and other DPS will use the backcritting crystal, in addition with bitter and savage crystals. But you know what, we're not talking about crystals because this is a dungeon run through. So he's going to slash, he'll rise in the air and slash the ground 15 meters in front of him. You can stay far away or very close to avoid being hit. If you are hit, you receive a stun damage effect. It can be cleansed. If you are stunned, he will focus his next attack on you. So he'll reveal a large red circle around him. That'll be his next attack. If you're caught, then you'll receive damage and a stun effect that can be cleansed. If stunned, he will focus on you. He will also charge a player noticeably by a purple ring, dealing damage and then trampling over them, and he will fly into the air and thrust forward after a short period, dealing damage. That's all for him. I mean, there's really nothing else that you have to worry about, because it's pretty simple. After you fight the waves of bosses, you just move on after you defeat him, and he's not too difficult. So I think this second boss, yeah, we're gonna go to the second boss after this. You're gonna go, after you get through the control room area, you're gonna want to make your way to the engine room area, and in order to do that, you have to take on these little mini mob bosses, like I like to call them. And I think our tank actually did a pretty good job here of keeping them all in the same area for us, because they're pretty easy to take out if you cannot have them all in the circle at the same time. And they shouldn't be any trouble for anybody. As long as you're able to take them out pretty quickly, then they shouldn't be trouble. Obviously you saw how fast we killed those last little mob thingies, so it's no different with these guys. Pretty simple. But the next boss that we're going to be going into is Iramos, I think is what he's called. A tip for the tank: all players should stay in the middle of the room to avoid the boss moving around too far for certain mechanics that he has. So I'm going to go ahead and start to actually read through this before we take on the boss here, because there's actually a lot of different mechanics here for this guy, and you know what? I don't actually know what they are, so I would like to read through them myself as well. So, Aeonalis pylons. Kremos is trying to destroy an Aeonalis pylon. That will be announced, and then Kremos will move to the center of the room and focus one of the stone's locations on the outer edge of the room. There are 8 in total, and the boss will attempt to destroy these stones with a laser. You and your party must stand inside the laser range to decrease the damage these pylons receive. You'll receive damage and a DOT debuff. Your healer must cleanse and heal the party. If you fail to shield the stones, and if all 6 break, your party will wipe. The laser is a purple color and is not to be confused with the boss's normal laser attack. So a tip for you is, the more people shielding the stones and taking the laser will reduce the amount of damage each player takes. So Mystic Thrall's Warrior Smoke Aggressor and Gunner's Turret ST4 will count as a body. So you want to make sure you get as many people in that laser as possible to help lower the damage. Shielding skills like Highest Shield and Mana Barrier will soak up some of the damage. Warding Scrolls will work as well. Skills such as Command, Recall, and Warp Barrier also will absorb the damage. Blocking will not soak up any damage though for the tank, if you would like to know anything about that. So he'll only do 1 purple laser at a time from 100 to 70% every 50 seconds. Then he's going to do 2 consecutive purple lasers from 69 to 30% every 50 seconds. After 30%, he will do 2 consecutive red lasers instead of 1. The second one is aimed at the furthest player and will do 70,000 flat damage instead. So Paramouse will attempt to laser a player, indicated by the purple ring. You must avoid this deadly attack. The laser is orange/yellow in color and is not to be confused with the pylon laser. However, you should move out of the way of any pylons. Do not stand between the boss and the stone if the laser is on you, as this laser can also do damage to the stones. So when he says small things so bothersome I'll kill, you should iframe the laser and it cannot be blocked. So he will also use a inner energy to deal a wave of damage in a cone and arc formation. He'll say, "Get back." Dislocated swipe. He will remove his arm and use it as a weapon, and he will swipe it side to side 4 times whilst moving forward. He will also remove his arm and use it as a weapon and slam it against the ground, and then proceed to slam it further into the ground 4 times. The third one can hit players directly behind him, while the fourth one does significantly higher damage. He also has a web. He will crouch and spawn webs on the floor around him, and these webs will damage and debuff players with a heavy movement speed decrease, but it can be cleansed. And then he has his central slam. If he moves too far to the middle, he'll slam his arm into the ground and jump towards the middle, causing fatal damage to anyone near the middle. He will then proceed to attempt to destroy an alienist pylon with the purple laser. So that is going to do it for him. There is some extra stuff if you are doing hard mode, but pretty much that's all of the mechanics wise that you'll have to worry about in terms of like me reading through the mechanics. Obviously it's way better if you just go ahead and do it yourself, but obviously the mechanics will show up on the screen and you can see them, and they'll help you out in defeating the boss, and hopefully the guide will help as well, because it'll make more sense than me just sitting here reading it. You're actually seeing it on the screen, and I'm not. So next thing you want to do is go to the deck teleportal and go to the Sky Cruiser deck, and this will be the final boss, Darkon. He is the final boss of this Sky Cruiser area. I can honestly say that it has been such a long time since I've been in this dungeon. I was in this dungeon a long time ago and had no earthly idea what I was doing. Because I made it to the last boss somehow, and I got killed several times because I didn't know what I was doing. But that was a long time ago, and then whenever the Sky Cruiser Endeavor came back, I was like, wait a minute, I recognize this dungeon. I've been through here before. I just didn't realize that I had been in here before. But I think now it's actually a lot easier than it was before. Now that you kind of know, that I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit, it is a little bit easier than it was before when I did it the first time a long time ago. So, tip for the tanks here. You should fight him in the middle. So his mechanics, like the circles, can be placed on the sides, and we'll definitely see those later. So, he has his basic combos. He's going to repeatedly use these throughout the fight. If he attacks with his left sword, rear view, DPS view first. So if you're in the rear and you can see, if he attacks with his left sword first, he will proceed with 2 consecutive normal attacks, and then a fire wing. If he attacks with his right sword, so this is from the back, if you're DPS. First, he will proceed with doing a normal attack to his left sword, and then do a fire swipe backwards, and then do an empowered strike. If he attacks with 2 consecutive empowered strikes, he will then do 2 fire swipes backwards, and then a fire charge forwards. So at 90%, he is going to reveal he will receive a shield effect and disappear. He will reappear with wings, as you can see, and be an empowered figure. During the first stage, his mechanics are limited to a basic combo, and more complex mechanics occur after he's empowered. So he is empowered now. So he will sheath his swords and rise into the air. You should run to the edges. This is the fire circles, which I think, I don't know if, yeah, we've done those at least once now. So whenever he puts the red circles around us, he's going to rise up in the air. We need to run to the edges because he will place circles around each of us, and they're going to do 30% per hit. You should attempt to avoid being hit just by escaping before you take final damage. Also, he has a ring of fire, so he's going to rise into the air and create a circle cage. You got to enter, and anyone out of the cage will die whenever he lands. So the cage will split into 3 sections, an inner, mid, and outer. One section will randomly become a danger zone, noticeably by a red indicator. You need to avoid that zone. It occurs 3 times before he slams on the ground, breaking the cage and then dealing the fatal damage to the players who got caught outside of the circle. And it cannot be iframed, although you can use standard iframes like breakaway bolt to survive. Sure. And they also have a little like a little figure here, I guess. Oh man, sorry, I was yawning. But they have a little figure here, I guess, of the different places, I guess, you can place the fiery circles or his inner circles and outer circles and things like that, that you can do. So if you want to see that, then you can just look up a TERA Sky Cruiser guide online, and it will definitely help you out there if you need some help with that. Alright, so there's a few mechanics here that I'm going to read through. Servants is the first one. So at 75% and 50%, he's going to say the fire will consume you, and then he will disappear and the room will turn red. Obviously, I think you've probably seen that at least once already. So a ghost will spawn and choose a player with the highest aggro, so it will say this player, you'll die, and then we'll chase the player and attack them with flat damage of 30,000 per hit until they die. So once it spawns, healers should just heal and generate aggro and then just run away from the ghost. If you don't kill it within the time limit, then the party will take fatal damage and die. But if you saw before what you're seeing right now, they're pretty easy to take out the little ghost, so it shouldn't be anything you have to worry about. So the 50% minion phase will have 2 minions instead of 1. Your team must be cooperative and stun and slow both the minions, as each hit 50,000 flat damage in hard mode. So we're not in hard mode, so we don't have to worry about that. The healer should actually aggro them both with a heal and cast Ishura's Lullaby or Sonorous Dreams on one ghost. Once the other ghost is stacked on top of this left ghost, the team should begin to use the CC on the ghost. These ghosts will enrage after 30%, although they can be force enraged. So that's the servants. The sword throw is another mechanic here. The boss will throw his sword and pull them back, leaving the ground scorched for a few seconds. Standing on the burned ground will inflict damage, and the initial throw will not apply the debuff, although getting hit by the pullback will apply a fire and bleeding effect. If the healer casts Resurrect, he will shout your time is running out and throw his swords at the healer. So Scream is another one. He will throw his swords onto the ground and scream, applying a cleansable debuff that deals damage over time and silences players. It can be blocked, although the attack will still deal damage, and healers can cleanse right before it's applied to cleanse the party immediately. Fire Charge as well. He'll spin and charge towards the player, causing damage. You won't be pushed, and it's always used after a Fire Swipe. A Fire Swipe will proceed 180 degrees clockwise and swipe, dealing damage to targets behind him. It applies bleeding, and he will do it after 2 consecutive regular attacks. If he starts with the right from the rear view, he will always do the fire swipe, 2 fire swipes after 2 consecutive empowered strikes. So it's kind of like the same thing that we were talking about earlier. He's going to empower his weapon as well and slam it on the ground. striking with enormous power, dealing massive damage and bleeding. Fire Wing is a mechanic as well. It's important to master, so he will slam on the ground with his swords, and if the sword slams in his regular auto attack with his left sword, he will continue to slam the ground another 2 times and proceed with the Fire Wing. It will push you to the edge of the map and applies bleeding. Avoid getting hit, you gotta pay attention to the swords. The final slam on the ground will determine the direction of the Fire Wing. He can fire left or right or in the direction that is determined by the sword that he uses, the left or the right, and that will be for the 4th slam. He will use more fiery and will be against the ground, and the other sword will be in the air. You'll also stay in this position for a short time before releasing a wave. Obviously this doesn't matter. I'm reading through all of this like it will matter, but it really doesn't matter because that's pretty much it. I mean, you could see all the mechanics on the screen anyway, so there's nothing that I don't think I haven't explained. But if you want to know, the guide is obviously online and you can read through it, but I just wanted to make this guide for you guys, my little run through here of the dungeon. So that's going to be it for me, and I will see you guys in whatever's next.